So in the program, we do a lot around ground rules and establishing what really works and what makes sense for us as a team, which is important. But I love this next piece, and this is a conflict team map that is just the best. I think it is really a brilliant way to think about this, depending on your DISC style. And again, it's not a one-to-one correspondence, but it's certainly something that's pretty accurate. There's a tendency to have more comfort and a higher, perhaps not even necessarily skill level, but I would say comfort with certain kinds of healthy behavior in conflict, but also certain kinds of unhealthy behavior in conflict. So as I mentioned, I told on myself, I'm this high I here with a secondary D. So 9 times out of 10, I will address issues, head on. I will speak up, I will express myself, and hopefully I will do it in a healthy way, in a constructive manner. I've learned past 20 plus years what not to do. But again, sometimes if it's unhealthy, it can be gossiping or saying something that you would regret, right? On the other end of the spectrum, telling you, Jimmy, a little bit, I think she said she's an SC over here. Is that okay? So down here, an SC is often very calm, a nice calming influence, a good listener. So her team member's nodding, yes, she is. But do you just love conflict when somebody's not so much? Right, so there's a tendency to retreat, and sometimes a little bit more passive aggressive behaviors on that end of the spectrum. So this is a really great way to understand why people are behaving the way that they are, okay? So, again, the point of this is when people engage in healthy conflict, then they're much more likely to commit to decisions. And there's a great quote, people who weigh in are more likely to buy in. And I love that because that's critical to understand. It's not about consensus. I don't necessarily have to 100% agree. I don't necessarily have to get everyone to think the same way. But as long as everyone feels like they've been heard, that they have really taken into account everyone's opinion as a group, as a team, then they're much more likely to commit to decisions. The challenge is most of the time people haven't really expressed what they feel, and therefore they haven't really bought in. But they'll, feign agreement. They'll say that they are bought in, but they're not really, okay? So I'm gonna go through these. Yes, ma'am. No, please ask.
I have an observation that leads to a question.
Okay, great.
It's a little model that I'm working on in my head, and it basically divides people into 2 camps when it comes to trust.
Mm-hmm.
There are people, when you meet them, you have their trust 100%,
Mm-hmm.
and there are people, when you meet them, you start at 0 and you earn their trust.
Yes.
So the question then is twofold, like to what extent does the model address that? Because if I'm thinking you have 100% trust,
Mm-hmm.
and you're losing it, but I'm not communicating that to you.
Yes.
And you think you're at 0, I don't know when I'm gaining trust.
Yes.
And the converse is true. I don't know when I'm losing or when I'm gaining.
Yes.
So to what extent does the model address that? Because you're going to lose and gain trust at any point in time.
Yes, very, very great question. Thank you for that. So I'll answer it in several different ways. The beauty of this is you're measuring where people are starting, and then later you do a progress report, and then you can measure at the end. So you see how the needle is moving in each of the areas, which is really powerful. But because you're integrating DISC into each piece of the puzzle, or the pyramid, if you will, you are talking about that openly. What is important to you for me to earn your trust, to gain your trust, and to keep your trust? And so you're having that dialogue on an ongoing basis.
Is there a loop around how do I regain trust if I lose it?
Yes. And that really happens more at this stage, at the commitment stage, and oftentimes what I'll spend time doing is spending a lot of time on the trust and conflict piece, and you really need to do that first, and then you can come to the commitment later. But many times people want to get through that messy conflict, the old Tuckman model, the norming, storming. We don't want that storming, and so you don't really get to the commitment level and don't really have the buy-in. But at each stage of the process, you're sort of looping back to trust.